Picture this. It's 8 p.m. Saturday night. Dad credibility has just hit the floor. Tucking my little girl into bed, she said, "Daddy, do you want a riddle?" Oh, no. No, I don't. No, I don't. My mind's going blank. I'm starting to sweat. She said, "Listen, what's always approaching but never arrives?" I'm like, come on, Daddy, think. You're not very clever, are you? No, I'm not, no. Come on, think. I was like, my credibility on the playground is going through the floor at this moment. I know this has been doing the rounds. I can't think, I give up. It's tomorrow, Daddy. I was like, simple when you say it. I'm thinking, how can I get this back? How can I get credibility back? I said, I'll tell you a little story about tomorrow. Tomorrow is all about applications, lovely girl. And applications, like the games that you play on your device, are very important. They build a future. They build a better future. Now, MongoDB enables all of the clever people that Daddy's going to stand up in front of, like a fraud, and talk about how they can build a better future with the right tools. Now, how cool is that? And she's like, yeah, that's cool. That is cool. Is that right? Now, tell that story to your kids in the playground. Thank you. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to MongoDB.local 2022. It's a pleasure to have nearly 2,000 people in a room discussing all things development efficiency and development productivity. So we've got a few good stories and good announcements to share with you today. And I'd like to kick off with a few thank yous. So, thank you to our key partners, Accenture, AWS, and Studio 3T. Without you guys, this would not be possible. The event, the venue, the collaboration, we really value our key partnerships, none more so than these three. So please make the time to learn how we coexist, we collaborate together. The value of us coming together is far better than us individually. Feedback. We value feedback. There'll be a QR code in every session. So our most important voice is our customer's voice. Please, scan the QR code and give your voice and feedback after every session. We can only get better with our feedback. And ask the experts. In the expert hall, there'll be people there to talk about problems, issues, challenges. Please use them. They're ready there. They're waiting, and they'll be more than happy to share your problems. And then finally, a little bit of housekeeping. We have drinks, prizes, trivia, all kicking off at 5:30 in the expo hall, and we'd love to see as many of you there to toast what will be a spectacular day at the end. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome our first keynote speaker to the stage, MongoDB's Chief Product Officer. Go absolutely bananas, please. It's Sahir Azam.
Thank you. Good morning, London. It's great to be back in my favorite city. Don't tell my fellow New Yorkers I said that, but it is true. It's been about a year since we had one of these conferences, and it grows every time, so thank you all for carving out time early and spending the day with us. As Rich mentioned, we have the privilege of working with many of you on modernizing your infrastructure and changing the way your business works. And one of the things we learned over the past few years is that a digital-first strategy is an imperative for almost every organization. We see every company, every senior management team, every board asking how quickly can we pivot to a digital-first strategy. Retailers had to be experts at e-commerce. Streaming companies and gaming companies had to deal with an influx of scale they'd never seen before. And healthcare companies and pharmacies had to meet the world where they were in the pandemic and get solutions out faster than ever. More than we've ever seen before, speed was critical. And as we worked with customers, one of the things that we heard over and over again is that they continued to learn that MongoDB was the fastest way to work with data. Developers could move insanely fast on iterating and trying new ideas. Product leaders could get products to market faster to serve their customers. And executives could seize new opportunities or fend off new threats that were emerging. And all of this is centered around one core ethos that we've been thinking about since the inception of the company, which is how do we empower developer productivity? This is what our founders thought of 15 years ago when they started the company, and it's still our core focus for every product or capability we release. So the obvious question is, what gets in the way of developer productivity? And time again, we hear that it's the friction of working with data. So everything we do is focused at MongoDB on removing that friction, to empower your teams to move faster, to focus on your biggest business problems as opposed to the plumbing and infrastructure. In my role as Chief Product Officer at Mongo, I have the privilege of meeting with thousands of customers. I get a lot of feedback. I hear a lot about the challenges you're all facing. But there's one thing I've never heard. No customer has ever complained to me about innovating too quickly. Everyone wants the opportunity to move faster, especially when they're stuck using brittle, legacy, complicated technologies stuck and holding their enterprise back. And that's why MongoDB has become so popular. And it all started with a bet on a new data model. The document model, coupled with a distributed architecture, unlocked developers. And we had many, many naysayers back then. The world didn't believe that you could have anything other than a relational database that could become mission critical, general purpose, and solve the largest scale use cases in the world. But developers said something different. And in fact, there's been more adoption of MongoDB in the last 12 months than there were in the first 12 years of our company's history. Over 300 million downloads of our community software. But in 2016, we as a company went through an expansion of our strategy and a crucial inflection point for our company with the launch of MongoDB Atlas. A lot of people thought we were crazy to build a cloud-native database service that would compete and at the same time partner with the major hyperscale cloud providers. Nobody had ever built a meaningful business at scale before trying to do so. By 2017, we launched a free tier, and we saw an immense volume of developers coming in and building a plethora of different use cases across everything from systems of engagement through systems of record to power the next generation applications they were conceiving of. And we worked very closely with our 3 cloud partners, AWS, GCP, and Microsoft Azure, on making sure not only that we had the most integrated, deep connections into their infrastructure, but that we enabled a frictionless buying experiences with integrations into all their marketplaces, and working together to make sure that we have the strongest multi-cloud capability across all 3 cloud providers. So fast forward to today. Atlas now has 160,000 developers signing up every month. The scale of this platform is only growing. It's now used by most of our customers, over 37,000. That's 30x over the past 8 years in terms of companies that are betting their mission-critical applications on our platform. And we are fortunate to see companies across the entire spectrum of industries worldwide. Whether it's Boots, a 180-year-old pharmaceutical here in the UK, pivoting to a digital-first e-commerce strategy with us. Toyota, betting their connected car platform on MongoDB Atlas to scale globally. Or Vodafone, with over 140 million IoT devices for real-time connectivity on top of their 5G network connecting into Atlas. And in fact, in every day, every one of us is touching MongoDB in some way, shape, or form in the applications and experiences we use in our daily lives. But for us, we are just getting started. And to give you a sense of how serious we are spending more in innovation and research and development at MongoDB this year than we did in the first 10 years of the company's history. And that's because we have immense confidence. We see the world building more and more compelling software, and our mission is to empower those innovators to create, transform, and disrupt industries by leveraging the power of software and data. Now, we believe we're well set up to help you all for a few key reasons. We see over and over again that traditional legacy systems have too many limitations. They're expensive, they're hard to scale, and they impose a rigidity that gets in the way of iteration and serving customer needs quickly. And so customers surround that technology, that legacy, that relational model, with a variety of different niche technologies to meet all the different use cases of new modern applications. So you end up with a situation like this. You might have a relational database at the core, a key value store to deal with high volume data, time series perhaps, caching technologies, search technologies, dedicated analytical technologies, and of course, all of the glue and integration to try to rationalize and keep this together. This problem exists when you're self-managing, whether that's in your own data center or in the public cloud. But what we've seen over the last few years is that this problem has gotten worse and worse. Because now, almost every development team in the cloud has access to a plethora of services they can get at their fingertips. On one hand, that's massively empowering. On the other hand, it's very dangerous. Because the subtle issue that comes up is these development teams spend more time plumbing and integrating this mess of data than they do innovating and providing value for the business. And so as we looked and went from a database company to a cloud data platform company, we said we needed to expand our own capabilities to solve this bigger problem. And we realized that the market needs something different. The market needs a platform that can empower and drive the innovation with software and data. And as we peeled back the onion and really tried to understand how to solve this, we found ourselves coming back to some of the same key tenets that our founders dealt with 15 years ago. One, developers need an elegant and simple experience to be able to move fast and get out of the way of thinking about how to massage and manage data. They need the ability to support a broad array of use cases in a single platform, so you get the leverage of your data being in the same place and solving many of the capabilities of modern applications without all that extra burden and complexity. And last but not least, you need stability, resilience, and security, not just in a single data center or a single region, but at global scale, with the privacy controls to protect customer data. And so for the past few years, that's what we've been doing by expanding MongoDB Atlas from a cloud database to a developer data platform that's focused on a single unified interface for a broad spectrum of workloads, all centered around an idiomatic query language called MQL. A variety of ways of deploying applications, search use cases, real-time analytical use cases, and of course, operational and transactional. And all built on the foundation of a distributed architecture that provides scalability and resilience without extra cost and machinery to make that happen. Now, this provides value if you're a small team building a single application or a single service. But how many of you have hundreds of developers or thousands of developers in your organization? We certainly do. And this problem gets even more challenging. And what we're seeing is organizations at scale want to build an application assembly line. They want their development teams to be able to scale and move faster, not only delivering capabilities for their application, but unlocking the silos across multiple teams and getting the leverage of repeatability and consistency in their organization. And so you can enable an end-to-end continuous delivery model with end-to-end automation and modern technologies such as serverless and containers all integrated into this platform. You're going to hear a lot more about the new technology we're building into this platform, the use cases that we're solving for customers. And to get us kicked off, I want to welcome Darren Gibson from Marks & Spencer, the CTO of Customer and Channels. They're an amazing company that we've been working with for years on this journey around software and data. So I'm excited to hear their story live here today in London. Thanks. Thanks, Sahir. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, Sahir, and good morning, everybody. So, myself and my team, we focus on delivering our customer-facing technology for Marks & Spencer's. Marks & Spencer's, as you may know, is a retailer born out of Leeds in 1884. And it's a long way from the penny bazaar that we once were. In fact, you may recognize this more as the M&S today. For one thing, it's in color. We deliver great clothing, home, and food products online and in-store for our customers at remarkable value. We have to adapt and innovate constantly to meet the ever-changing demands of our customers and their needs. Our business is comprised of 4 units: food, clothing and home, banking services, and international. And the needs of this business is all underpinned by a common purpose, that there's a bunch of complexity that sits behind delivering a technology-based organization that serves the needs of some very different demands. A bank has a very different requirement to actually running and operating a food business, where we have to focus on delivering great products, fresh, and making them available for our customers, while minimizing food waste. The logistic complexity of running a clothing and home business that fulfills to over 100 countries, and making sure the product gets there on time for our customer needs. So how do we ensure, as a technology team, that we remain agile and deliver the needs of what our business and customers need, while we innovate and drive the new platform and minimize the complexity of the technology estate? Well, that's what I do, right? I give the context and structure for the teams to be empowered and to align autonomously to deliver the outcomes, the OKRs that move the business forward and enable them to innovate and deliver value to the business. As Sahir said, the complexity around developer productivity in this space is massive. How do we ensure that those 2 pizza teams are actually focusing on innovating and delivering value, when actually we need to make sure that we deliver solutions that scale to billions of transactions, that they're secure, that they're available all the time, that actually we don't lose an order and we show our customers we really care. Focusing on developer productivity and ensuring that our teams are innovating and not just doing utility stuff is at the heart of the problem that I have to face into. I help through creating a technology strategy that frames the way that we approach solving problems. And I'll just touch on 2 elements of that today. One of the things that we do is we find great strategic partners that we can work with and enable us to innovate, and for us to focus on what we need by using them to deliver what they're brilliant at. And we can be better than the sum of our parts. The other is platforms. Platforms, whether built internally or by partners such as Mongo and Atlas, enable us to stand on the shoulders of giants, to not focus on delivering what already has been invented, already is brilliant. Our people can focus on delivering great outcome to customers, reusing platforms, and exponentially innovating. We have a Tech North Star that then enables us to think about how we build our architecture, how we create solutions that work all the time. Exploit the cloud is obvious. Leveraging cloud enables us to focus on speed and innovation. Reliable by design, I think, is key here. Actually making those billions of transactions work every day, to be available, for the data to be persisted at extreme low latency, for us to ensure that we are backed up, we're secure, is actually harder than it sounds. So we think about utility and vitality in this space. And for us, vitality is things that if we get right, we win as a business. We deliver fantastic outcomes for our customers. For us, Atlas and MongoDB is not vitality. If we get brilliant at creating a database, Marks and Spencers do not win. It's vitality for MongoDB. It's where they need to spend their time innovating and creating differentiating outcomes. Actually, if we can enable our team to innovate and focus on delivering great customer value and thinking about where we buy utility-based products and where we build vitality-based products, leveraging the cloud to make us accelerate and move fast. That's how, as a business, we will succeed. So that's all I've got to say today. I wanted to thank you for your time. And check out Amit, who is going to speak later in one of the breakouts on our how we use Atlas to support delivering our loyalty platform, Sparks. And also we've got a booth out there, so come and see us on the booth. And I'll hand you back over to Sahir. So thank you.
Thank you, Darren, for sharing that amazing story about Marks & Spencer and the interesting work they're doing on the Atlas platform. So earlier, I talked about the 3 key tenets of a developer data platform and how we work backwards from that to build Atlas. So to remind you, the first is the elegant developer experience. For us, everything starts with this. We don't build a feature, a capability, a new product if we can't work backwards from empowering developers to move faster with deep integration. Now, in many ways, our whole industry is focused on empowering this flexibility and innovation. You've seen, for example, at the compute layer and physical infrastructure move over to virtual machines move to containers, and now containers even giving way to serverless architectures, all about higher levels of abstraction that allows our teams to focus on building differentiated functionality and not on the plumbing. Now, when we looked out at the market, this is certainly not a new concept, we found some challenges. We saw that most serverless databases left developers wanting more. And when we looked at the plethora of existing options, we found some challenges. 1, most existing options have a limited set of functionality. They're either eventually consistent key value stores, or they have the rigidity of a relational database. They don't have the breadth and functionality to be the heart of a mission-critical application. They also impose odd scaling trade-offs. Either your costs scale to 0, but then you have to pay for a cold start delay, or you want instant scalability, but then you're paying when you're not using the service. Costs also are hard to predict and grow linearly with capacity and deployment and usage. And finally, we see an immense amount of lock-in. The majority of serverless offerings, if not all in the market, lock you into a higher level of abstraction that's proprietary to a single infrastructure provider. And so we found an opportunity to move the industry forward. And this summer, we announced the general availability of Atlas Serverless. It allows you to deploy our database in seconds in a full read-write consumption model. And we hope to build a database that provides a serverless model without those compromises. So to start, we focused on making sure we brought forward the full power of MongoDB, rich secondary indexes, our expressive query language, strong transactional guarantees, and much more. We really focused on trying to not have to deal with the same scaling trade-offs. So you could bring your cost down to 0 if your application's not being used, but quickly scale up if capacity were to come online fast. We innovated in our pricing model by baking in automatic usage-based discounts without provision capacity and commitments. And of course, we give you the flexibility, if needed, to move to a dedicated deployment if you need more isolation and control, or to migrate from any major cloud and back and forth without any downtime. Next, as we think about the next tenet of our platform, we think about how we can centralize the majority of use cases that you need in your organization. And that demands supporting a bunch of different use cases and workloads in one single platform. So to help articulate this, we came up with a sample business and a sample application here called Leafy. Don't worry, MongoDB is not pivoting to become a botanical powerhouse in the industry. This is just an example, but hopefully it can walk you through the breadth of capabilities that we now have in our platform. Now, to break this down, Leafy has a few different key constituents. It's a dual-sided marketplace, so you have sellers who are growing plants across the world and trying to find customers and be able to distribute their amazing, beautiful foliage. And then you have buyers who are looking to find that perfect plant for their home and office. They want to be able to transact like any other digital marketplace. And then, of course, you have Leafy Corporation itself, the innovative startup trying to disrupt the plant industry and manage this dual-sided business. Now, like many applications, when we think about Leafy, the first thing we want to do is make sure that it's very easy for our customers to find what we're looking for, through, in this case, a product catalog experience. Now, for most applications, this means standing up a dedicated search engine, a dedicated search database to empower this type of rich experience. But that imposes, of course, extra complexity. Your application now needs multiple drivers, multiple authentication schemes to deal with those multiple databases. You have your core operational database side by side with something like Solr or Elasticsearch to manage the inverted index-based queries that power search. But that's not all. You also typically have a streaming technology or a data pipeline that needs to be maintained and integrated to try to keep that data shuttled back and forth and consistent. And for many teams, we hear that 20 to 30% of their time is managing that integration of the technologies and data back and forth. And so a few years ago, we focused on building Atlas Search, a fully integrated relevance search technology behind the same MongoDB API without any operational overhead. And since 2020, we've been maturing that technology with the key capabilities necessary to consolidate and simplify that experience and infrastructure, whether it's synonyms, facets, or other capabilities. So I'm excited to focus on two key areas today. The first, facets. This is your canonical filter-based experience that you'd see in any e-commerce site, any store, any product catalog that you need to deliver. This is now 100 times faster than just using the core database capabilities, and it's all integrated into our query language. We also added more like this, so you can allow definitions of related items to make recommendation engines even easier to build. These are some of the newest capabilities we've added to make it even simpler to deploy on MongoDB Atlas. Now, the way our customers at Leafy Corporation integrate with use our application is not just online, on the web, it's on a mobile phone. Our sellers, for example, have to go inventory their plants in their greenhouse, perhaps on a spotty connection. My users want to be shopping when they're online or just sitting on the couch and don't have a laptop in front of them. So for many of us who build these applications, we have to go ahead and figure out how to make that experience work. You need a mobile development team that's building the application, perhaps leveraging some type of data persistence or data APIs on the device, such as SQLite, core data. And then we have to figure out how to shuttle that information and integrate it back and forth. So we stand up custom backends, REST APIs, push notification services to integrate that back to our system of record in the cloud. The challenge is that's a really hard problem to solve and takes a lot of time and effort, because dealing with resilient network code that manages all the different edge cases of mobile and distributed devices is tricky. For example, what happens if a request fails halfway through or an API sends back data in a format that wasn't expected? Managing those conflicts, the high latency, the variable latency, becomes a real challenge. And you need to handle all of that while trying to minimize battery and data use. So when we talk to mobile development teams and the back-end teams that support them, again, we found that 20, 30, 40% of their time is dealing with this plumbing instead of building a great mobile experience. And so 2 years ago, we acquired a company called Realm. And Realm had built an amazing mobile database. It allowed developers to move fast while building those mobile applications. And they also built a novel synchronization technology. So we spent 2 years with the Realm team integrating that back into Atlas and giving you a prescriptive, fast, and efficient synchronization service that removes all the need for conflict management and synchronization across devices on any platform. And so this summer, I'm excited to announce that we released Flexible Sync. This is a configuration-based model where you can define a query and it automatically determines which data is allowed to go to which user on which phone automatically, without custom code, custom APIs, and custom network plumbing. We also released asymmetric sync. This is key for use cases such as manufacturing or IoT, where you're collecting large volumes of data and trying to ingest that quickly back into MongoDB and perhaps into a time series collection. And we announced new SDKs for Kotlin and Flutter, the two most popular cross-platform languages that are emerging in the mobile ecosystem. Now, I've got my search engine powering a great relevance-based experience. I've got my amazing front-end application built on mobile or web to be able to leverage that. What's next? Well, now I want to empower a richer experience for my buyers. I don't want to just give them a price. I want them to see what the last marketplace price was, how many people are looking at this good in real time at any given time, and a variety of different use cases. The types of queries that power this experience are not your simple transactional high throughput queries. These are typically analytical queries, but they're embedded in the application. They have more complex query shapes. They span multiple collections. They aggregate data fluidly. In my use case, this also applies to sellers. I may want to see real-time projections on how my goods are selling, which geographies are good. And again, these are more analytical query patterns, but increasingly being brought to the application experience. Now, many of us have built these types of experiences into our applications, and there's even more demand coming for them. But it requires a lot of complexity. It requires not just your operational database, but oftentimes a cache. You may need dedicated databases if you're dealing with time series information. There are emerging categories of dedicated real-time analytics databases that add even more steps, and of course, all the ETL pipelines to make that work. We thought there has to be a better way. Now, MongoDB has been used to power these real-time analytical experiences for many years, but we know there's more to do. So in 5.0, we released window functions, which will allow you to have moving averages, cumulative sums, easily inside your database query. We added new operators and accumulators like top and bottom that allow you to simplify your code and put more computation down to the database. And we added analytics nodes in Atlas, which allow you to have your operational data isolated easily from your analytical queries so one's not interfering with another. And over the past few years, we've seen thousands of customers in Atlas leverage these analytical nodes. But one thing we heard loud and clear was that customers wanted the ability to tune those nodes to match the different workload requirements without having to have the same infrastructure and instances across their cluster. So I'm excited to announce Atlas Analytic Node tiers, where you can now have different infrastructure, different characteristics to drive those real-time analytical queries that power your application, all in the same cluster as where you're running your transactions. One single platform, consolidating all of that complexity. Now, besides infrastructure optimization, many of these queries require joining multiple sources of data from multiple collections together. And so for the last few releases, we've been investing in our lookup infrastructure, which is the equivalent of joins in Mongo. And we've been adding capabilities over the last couple of years to not only give performance improvements for replica sets, but bringing lookups forward into sharded clusters. Now, with the new lookup capabilities in 6.0, we see anything from a 2x improvement when you have several matches on a large data set of volume of data. We see a 5 to 10x improvement if you have a smaller number of matches, and up to a 100x improvement if you don't have an index and you're running exploratory queries on the data. This has been one of the most requested improvements from our platform that we've heard over the years, and we've really moved the needle forward in this latest release. But that's not all. This year, we started also working on column store indexes, so we could optimize query patterns that aggregate large volume of data across a single field, across many documents, instead of just transactions dealing with a typical row-based index. Again, all in a single platform, so you don't have to move your data to a dedicated real-time analytics database to power those types of queries. And with column store indexes, we're expecting a 15x performance improvement. So you can empower more of those rich application experiences, whether it's Leafy Corp's real-time seller dashboard or mission-critical use cases such as real-time logistics, supply chain optimization, fraud detection for financial industries, all within our platform. Now, oftentimes when we talk about real-time analytics, the underlying data structure is time series data. In this case, my price history happens to be time series as it fluctuates because it's a real-time marketplace. But we see this everywhere in manufacturing, IoT, industrial use cases across the globe. And so in 5.0, we released native time series collections in MongoDB. Now, many of you in the room and many of our customers worldwide have been using MongoDB for time series data for some time. But we heard loud and clear that we needed to build much more native capability to efficiently ingest that data, store it more cheaply on disk, and give you operators in the query language that make it easy to manage large volumes of this information, both hot and cold in our platform. And so we've been making, throughout the year, enhancements to time series collection, whether it's sharding support, compression for more efficiency, and even gap filling. And now with 6.0, we've added secondary indexing capabilities, geospatial support, and read performance improvements, making it easier to simplify and not have the need for a dedicated time series database. So now, if you step back, Atlas has really become a unified platform for real-time in-app analytics that can power those smarter application experiences, no matter what industry you're building for. The combination of Atlas analytic node tiers, faster join performance with lookup, the announcement of column store indexes, and of course, native time series support makes this the most powerful platform to empower use cases across retail, manufacturing, IoT, financial services, you name it. Now, if I step back to my Leafy example, we've talked about some of the simple use cases our sellers or perhaps buyers need. But in order to build any business, it's not just the developers. Of course, there's a whole value chain of other technologists that are required to build a successful business. So, as an example, you may have business analysts that are creating reports to understand how the organization's working and how the business is healthy. Data scientists who are building models on top of this data to come up with novel ways to automate or improve the business. And of course, data engineers gluing this all together to make sure the right people have the right data as fast as possible. And when we step back and we look at these different personas and constituents in our customers, there's really kind of two macro ways they work with data. They look backwards and get a historical view. This happens to be an example of sales comparison, this year versus last year. So I can see how things are going based on past performance. And you also see projections, people modeling and looking forward to try to get ahead of long-term planning and make the right decisions for next year, like we're all doing right now at the end of our fiscal years. But what's missing? What we believe is missing is a real-time view of the business. Digital-first businesses move much faster than the traditional brick-and-mortar supply chains we're used to. And so the ability for executives to have a real-time picture of what's happening in the business, for a product manager to determine which feature, capability, or items are selling fast, to move back and forth on those decisions very quickly in real time is a necessity to make downstream decisions effectively in 2022 and beyond. And for Leafy, that means we needed a business dashboard, not served out of historical data a week later in my data warehouse, but real time based on the application and how it's actually performing and how the marketplace is doing. And we see examples of this in every industry. But of course, creating this needs yet another complex mess. You need your operational database integrating that time series data. There's lag there. You may need to push things down to an analytical data store to just be able to deal with the volume of data and deliver those aggregations back to a caching layer to serve that back up to the app. We see this pattern and similar patterns all day long. And of course, if you want that historical view, you have to export everything to a data lake or data warehousing solution to build those long-term, long-running reports. We felt like there had to be a simpler way to solve this life cycle of data. As more and more applications were being built on Mongo, we saw more and more of a need for these downstream constituents to unlock the value of that data. And to show you that, I want to invite Stanimira Vlaeva, a developer advocate at MongoDB, and she's going to walk you through how we're simplifying this mess, not just for developers, but for those other constituents inside your organization. Thank you.
Well, hi everyone. I'm really excited to be here today because I have the chance to not only talk about, but also show you two incredible features from Atlas. That's right, 2 features, 1 demo, special deal today. And let's jump right into that demo. You already saw this business dashboard that Leafy Corp uses to track the overall state of their business. But I brought it back up here today because I want you to notice the numbers in the performance section. Now, I'm not a salesperson, I'm not gonna analyze these numbers, but what I want you to notice is that they're all in US dollars. In order to calculate these numbers, however, Leafy needs to incorporate real-time currency exchange rate data, because plants in Leafy are traded in multiple different currencies. And this can be a challenge for different reasons. One of them is that this is external data. It's coming from some API probably. And second, this is the definition of real-time data. Currency exchange rates change virtually every second. But I will show you how easy it is to incorporate external sources like this into your data analytic pipelines using data federation. Data federation is an Atlas feature. You can find it right here in the side menu in Atlas. And it allows you to create a federated virtual MongoDB instance. This instance can give you access, live access, over data stored in multiple Atlas clusters, Atlas Data Lake, or external sources, such as third-party APIs or cloud storage. So let's configure one of these so you can see what I mean. On the right here, I have my virtual instance. And on the left are the data sources that I will be adding one by one. First thing I want to do is rename this instance to something a bit cooler. And now I can go ahead and add my first data source. This data source will be the production data of Leafy, which is stored in, you guessed it, in Atlas, because we are on a MongoDB conference. So I can select my cluster here from the drop-down. And now I will see a list with all the databases, all the collections in this cluster. I will just select all of them. And now I see them here as data sources. Now, time to configure the virtual database and the virtual collection. I will just reuse the default ones, but I will change their name so I have something a bit more meaningful to work with. We have LeafyDB, and our virtual collection will be called Sellers. Now, I will go ahead to the real Sellers collection from my production cluster and select that and drag it over here as a data source for the virtual collection. Now, I'm not actually copying over any data. I'm not migrating data or anything like that. I'm simply telling Federation that every query that I execute against the virtual collection should actually be executed against the real collection. All right, I'm going to add another virtual collection to represent the live foreign exchange rates. Once again, this is not data from our own database. It's coming from an external place. So let's add a new data source. You can use files stored in your Amazon S3 buckets. You can access JSON, BSON, CSV files, even highly compressed files such as Parquet files. But this is not the option that we're going to choose today. We will use the HTTP data source. And here I can configure an API endpoint that I can query. So I'm going to configure a store called LiveFXRates, and I'm going to provide the URL for an API that returns foreign exchange rates. And now I have this endpoint. I have essentially this URL here as a data source. I can add it to the virtual collection, and every time I query this collection, I will be actually making a live HTTP request to this URL. Federation will take the HTTP response, it's going to wrap it as a MongoDB document, and it's going to return it as a result of my query. So I can actually work with this data as though it was real data stored in my database. But I'm going to give you a quick fast forward here. The HTTP response is not in the most comfortable format to work with. So I'm going to add a view on top of this collection to reshape the incoming response. I'm going to add an FX table view that will convert the data to a more tabular format. And here, I can add an aggregation pipeline. And this aggregation pipeline will unwind the currency exchange rates object, and it's going to create one document per currency. Now, don't worry about the exact code. You can find it later. Trust me, it works, hopefully. And this is the full configuration that we need. You can also configure federated instances using APIs, configuration as code, everything you like. So I'm going to save it here. And now we are ready to connect. But how do we connect? How do we use this cool new feature? It can be stressful sometimes to work with new features, right? But actually, it's very simple. It's very simple to connect to these federated instances. You can connect with the connection string and with your credentials. It's the exact same way you connect to regular MongoDB instances. To demonstrate that, I'm going to jump in the shell, and I'm going to use the most low-level tool I could think of, which is the MongoDB shell. So I'm entering my connection string and my credentials, and that's all I need to connect to the federated instance. I can treat it as a regular MongoDB database. I can execute commands such as show collections, and we see the collections that we just configured. I can query these collections as though they were regular MongoDB collections. So if I query sellers, I will see one document from my production database. We see the seller, super plans, who is trading these 3 plans using the euro currency. Now, the real magic comes in when I query the live FX rates collection. Again, I will be making a real-time HTTP request to the API that we configured. So let's see what happens. We get a response. This is a MongoDB document. We have the currency rates of a few currencies against the US dollar. Now, I'm going to execute that again and notice any of these numbers. Let's watch them closely. When I execute, they change because, again, we're working with real-time data. And every time I query this collection, I'm making a new request. Now, let's see what is in the view that we created on top of this collection. We created an FX table view to reshape the incoming response. And here we have one document per currency with the currency exchange rate. Now, this is something that I can work with. I will join data, I will federate data, if you will, from this table and the seller's collection so that I can calculate the US dollar price for all the plans in Leafy. Let's see how this works like in theory. On the left, we have our seller document. We have the currency that they're using, euro. We can look up the currency symbol against the FX table. We can then extract the exchange rate, and naturally, we will use the exchange rate to calculate the dollar price. Now, we can repeat this process for every single plant, every single document that we have in the database. And finally, we can group the plans by their name and calculate the minimum, maximum, and total price in US dollars for every plant's PC that is in our store. All right, all that looks great in practice. In theory, let's see if we can make it work in practice. So I'm going to add this aggregation pipeline here. It does exactly the same thing that you just saw on the slide. Trust me, don't worry about it. And when I execute that aggregation, I will get one document per plant with the calculated price in US dollars. If I wanted to materialize this result to be able to display it on the dashboard that we saw, I can add another aggregation magic called the dollar out stage. And when I append that to the end of my aggregation pipeline, it will save the results back into the MongoDB database that we have connected. And this is all pretty cool. We were able to take our production data and combine it with data coming from a third-party API in real time to calculate the current price in US dollars for every single plant in our database. And that's pretty cool if you ask me. But I can see that some of you are not as excited as I am. And maybe it happened because I told you not to worry about the aggregations that we saw. I understand that. We're developers. When we see a bunch of code on the screen, we worry about it, but it works, trust me. Or maybe it's something else. And we've heard this reason over and over again here at MongoDB. People say, my data engineers, my data analysts don't know how to work with MongoDB aggregations. They don't understand this developer language. But if we ask them what is a tool that they're comfortable with, what is something that they can use, many of them will say SQL. So what if I were able to add a SQL expression over here and execute it on top of my MongoDB data and get the same result as I got when I was using aggregation pipelines? That would enable a lot of people to work with MongoDB, wouldn't it? And this is now possible. This is the second feature that I promised to show you. You can now execute read-only SQL expressions to analyze MongoDB data and data coming from external sources, such as AWS buckets, cloud storage, or external APIs. And normally, you wouldn't use that in the shell. You would be using it from your favorite data analytics tool, such as Tableau. Or if you're a data scientist, you can now use these SQL expressions to analyze MongoDB data from your Jupyter notebooks. If you work in back office reporting, you can do the same thing from your Excel spreadsheets. If you're a business analyst, again, you can use Tableau or SAS to execute these SQL expressions and analyze data, federated data from MongoDB Atlas, from Atlas Data Lake, and external sources. This unlocks a whole new world of possibilities for data analytics with MongoDB. And I'm very excited to see what each one of you can build and what you can use these features for. And thank you so much. With that, I would like to invite Rich back on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanimira. Hopefully that gave you some insight into what Sahir was talking about, and it does exist, moving us more into an analytical workspace. But thank you very much. That was very enlightening. I'd like to welcome the godfather of databases to the stage, MongoDB's Chief Technology Officer, Mark Porter.
Thank you very much, Richard. Hey, everybody. It is wonderful to see you today. It's wonderful to be back in London. Stanimira gave an incredible presentation. Can we all give her a round of applause for what she did? I'm going to be a little bit more interactive than some of the other people, so let's get going. Let's be interactive together. So what you've heard today is some pretty incredible technology, and I get to give you 3 releases more today to talk about. So the first one is this concept of what Stanimira showed you, of this serving the entire data lifecycle, starting with Atlas Data Lake, which supports tiering, which supports high-volume analytical data in ways that you just couldn't do with basic MongoDB. Next, we have Atlas Data Federation, which lets you work with multiple data sources. And Stanimira didn't even have time to show you that you can federate with S3 buckets, though she talked about it. So imagine the apps you can build: MongoDB databases, HTTPS real-time data sources, and S3 buckets. You can do things so easy, and they all just appear like a database. With Atlas Charts, which actually this morning, you've seen a huge number of Atlas Charts in the leafy screens that we've generated that you can embed directly into your web pages, directly into your apps, without leaving the MongoDB ecosystem if you don't want to. And finally, the Atlas SQL interface, which allows all the tools which many of the people in your company who know how to use can directly talk to MongoDB databases for the first time. This is a huge set of products for you to use. And when you think about our example leafy application, everything you saw there, I'm going to use some words Sahir used this morning, elegantly integrated. He wasn't joking. Literally, in every product plan we do, we say, how elegant will this feel to our customers? And I hope when you see leafy and everything we've put together, you see that. And then what we do is we manage it for you, we provision it for you, we operate it for you, so you can focus on moving your business ahead quickly. Hopefully that wasn't some plants back there. However, for every company out there, security is becoming more and more important. For good reasons, for bad reasons. Good reasons that we're carrying more, bad reasons because there's more attackers out there. And so MongoDB is not shedding its responsibility in that either, and we need to figure out how to handle your most sensitive data even better. So I'm going to give you a tiny little brief on encryption and on security, and I'm going to tell you about a new feature in MongoDB. There are many ways that your data needs to be secure. It needs to be secure on the network. It needs to be secure in storage. And you've all seen this before with network TLS and with volume encryption. And the terms of industry, the terms of art, are encryption in transit and encryption at rest. And we all know those terms. But what about encryption in the database while the data is being used? The reality is, your data is in free form, in clear text, in the database server memory. And that's so that you can do queries, so you can do all these things with it. The problem is you have DBAs who can access it. You might have cloud providers who can access it. You might have viruses or exploits like Meltdown that can access it. And that's just not OK. So in 2019, we released CSFLE, which is client-side field-level encryption. It lets the data stay encrypted on the client side, on the server side, and be decrypted on the client side. But the problem is you lost all that magical database functionality, sorts, scans, lookups, range searches. CSFLE is better than what we had before, but it's frankly not good enough. And we wanted to make it better. We wanted to give you the ability to have security when your data was in use. So imagine that you did have the ability to have all of those different things you wanted, and yet still know for sure that your data could not be decrypted by a bad actor or a negligent DBA. So today, I'm announcing, after many years of work, after bringing on an entire team of industry professionals, that only with MongoDB, you have queryable encryption. Come on, applause. Okay? Now, I've been in the database industry for 30 years, and that actually deserves applause. There is no one else who can do this. This is an only with MongoDB feature. And what it does is it lets you have rich, expressive queries, starting with exact match, which I'll show you here in a second. And then over the next year or two, we're going to be launching range search, prefix, substring, and postfix searches. Industry first. When I talk to customers about this, they say, we can now move to the cloud. There are IT departments who've been preventing them from moving to the cloud. Developers are like, with these guarantees, we can now move to the cloud. So let's learn a little bit more. There's 4 simple steps. The first step is I would like to find all billing records for a patient with one NI number, national insurance number. And you can see it there on the screen. It starts with GH. Now, in old systems, you would send that up with that standard query to the server, and the server would see GH. Not with queryable encryption. Queryable encryption, we encrypt on the client side even the key you're looking for. The server doesn't even know that you're looking for this national insurance number. Now, second, you might be able to determine cool things on the server if every record on the server looked like that ER gobbledygook you see there. But it doesn't. With queryable encryption, and this is the magic, we mathematically are able to hide that key inside 3 different NI numbers on 3 different records. You can't determine whether they're the same. You can't determine what the core was. Even us, as database administrators for your fleet, have no access to that data. And yet, on the client side, when it comes back, it's just in clear text for your application to process, with you doing nothing except declaring that field as a queryable encryption field. This has been an amazing journey for us, and we're really excited about it. So we started in 2019 with CSFLE. We launched Exact Match, and now we're going to be launching more as time goes on. We're very excited about what this can do for you and your apps so that everything is encrypted all the time, and yet completely transparently to you. So to sum up, encrypt your sensitive fields, have rich expressive queries. I've said that like 3 times. You got it. But here's the last part. We don't believe in black box security where we hide it from you. We believe in white box security. So we have published the algorithms mathematically. We have published the key parts of the source code, and they're all out on the internet for everyone to review. And we believe that's a fundamental part of modern security. And if you'd like to learn more, there's a session today at 2:20 that's going to talk more about it. And in fact, there's 2 sessions. This is just one. Important feature that lets you do more. Security is important to everybody. And so for our next customer speaker, I'd like to introduce Mikey Smith, who is the Money Market Group Technology Director, and he's going to talk about their journey to MongoDB Atlas.
Cheers, thanks. Hey everyone, some pretty cool stuff been announced today. Looking forward to getting our hands on some of that. So, lots of people probably know MoneySuperMarket, and we've put out some interesting adverts over the years. Meeting Skeletor and He-Man in the office was definitely a key highlight for me. But for those less familiar, and principally we work across 3 main consumer brands. So we have our comparison website, which is MoneySuperMarket, where we operate a broad range of products, giving consumers quite a wide range of choice of products to compare and switch to. We have Money Saving Expert, which is one of the UK's biggest financial consumer websites, where we're really looking to dedicate our time to helping people make more of their money, and also to target some of that financial injustice that you might have seen spearheaded by Martin Lewis. We also welcomed Quidco to the group in 2021, which is a leading cashback site which offers deals on over 5,000 popular brands. So our mission across all of this is to help households save more money. And last year we helped save our customers an estimated £1.6 billion. So now more than ever, with the cost of living, it's important that we make sure that we double down on landing our mission. We've seen domestic gas prices rise up 96%. We've seen electricity up 54%, meaning that a total of 4 in 10 customers are starting to worry about their ability to pay their energy bills. There's also a staggering 91% of adults who have reported an increase in their cost of living, with 2/3 of those now starting to be a bit more frugal and starting to worry and cut out some of their essential spending. So how are we going to help households make more of their money and make it easier for them to make good financial choices? So it's sometimes easy to forget that before a new service or an app pops up around what life was like before that, and certainly before MoneySuperMarket came and the advent of price comparison, you'd have to phone around lots of different insurance companies trying to get the best price, taking lots of time on the phone, repeating the same questions. But also, if you were like me, you also had to try and explain why you'd attach some neon lights to a 1-litre Volkswagen Polo. But MoneySuperMarket took that task that used to take hours and turned it into minutes. But as we started to expand into new products and new markets, we took that same approach and we started to make it work for consumers. But our approach really started to cause a problem for ourselves. So you can see here that we put a lot of effort into thinking about product and team autonomy, but what we actually ended up doing was creating lots of repeating stacks, all the way from the front end to the back end, and also the data that models them, which made it really inefficient that when we wanted to start rolling out new features to our customer base, like advanced authentication, it made it really hard to do so. But also, these problems started to manifest ourselves up to our customers. So sharing that data across our products was hard because, as you can see here, we'd ask similar questions slightly differently across more of our product sets. So when a user would come to us for maybe home insurance and they'd give us some of the data, we'd struggle to adapt that to when you land on your car insurance journey after a user would painstakingly give us their answers. So this also caused us problems upstream. We had some real headaches for our data science team, who were looking to give more insight to customers, but they were struggled really by this siloed view that we had around our customer data. So what we did, we embarked on a new project and moved towards a very platform-centric approach to building effectively a question set as a service, which we lovingly call internally Dialogue, which is all about having that better conversation with a customer. And at its core, it was underpinned by this new data service or an answer bank, where data is modeled correctly so that we could replay it, we could track it, we could understand its lineage, but also that the relationships were modeled correctly. So we could understand whether this was your vehicle versus your partner as an additional driver. And some of you might have heard the talk before around that connotation around NoSQL databases kind of been stigmatized, with been known as non-relational. We fully embraced that as part of our new platform and started to understand those relationships between the data. But also that not all data is equal in terms of the life cycle. So an answer for particularly where you live or your name and address, they live longer than maybe what you're looking for, how much a loan to take out for. All of this was built on top of Mongo Atlas, and being FCA regulated, we really take the security of our customers' data seriously. And some of those advanced security features that Mark just mentioned, we've started to leverage as part of our platform, and it's really been pivotal in helping us achieve our own really strict security standards. So now we have this powerful data-driven architecture and system. We're able to start using these APIs to power customer experiences like we've never been able to do before. So much so that we can start to tangibly shorten the user's journey to create a more seamless way through to giving those questions and seeing those answers. But it also means that we can start to connect customers more with more of our products and really help them start to make more of their money. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being our partner.
There we go.
Thank you so much, Mikey and MoneySuperMarket, for being our partners, like so many of you out there today. We love to see how adopting Atlas, including the cool security stuff I just told you about, is helping provide a truly omni-channel experience for everybody and for your customers. I have 2 more exciting announcements to make today, and then we'll all bring it home. Thank you for your attention. Today we have talked, and Sahir has told you about so many exciting, incredible new capabilities. Obviously, we love our developer data platform, and we hope you do too. But many of you out there are in companies that have legacy applications that were written 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, and your data is locked up in those. Those are your system of record. So what are you going to do with those? They're monolithic, they're brittle, they were written using languages that people don't use that much anymore, and all the people who wrote it might not even work at your company anymore. So this has become very much a problem for a lot of companies we work with. Writing new apps is pretty easy. You can do it. We've talked about it today. It's great. I mean, look at Leafy. Look at what Stanley Mira did. But existing workloads are mostly stuck in relational and are mostly tied up in these monolithic architectures. And ever since MongoDB was founded back in 2007, we've been helping customers modernize, one by one, painfully, app by app. But we decided there had to be a way to make these migrations easier. And so I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about why it's hard, and then we'll get into what we did. The first thing is, in these relational databases, you often have schemas of hundreds or thousands of tables. They're too complicated to think about, and they have interconnections in between them that no one even knows about anymore. So you have to break them down piece by piece by piece. I was asked to give a talk to over 2,000 people at an American healthcare company, and they gave me the title of the talk. And the title was, How Relational Technology is Stifling Innovation at Our Company. That was my lead-in. That's what I had to talk about. And as I researched it, I found all sorts of reasons why that was a real problem. There's 2 main hard parts. Modernizing the schema to make it work with modern languages and modern architectures, and moving the data with no downtime. So let's look at an example schema. You have 3 tables here, author, travel, works. And if you see the left, it looks like a standard schema. If you see the right, you see how you'd really like to work with this data. You see that we've embedded various things into the tables. You see that it's much easier for languages to parse and traverse without some hideous Frankenstein layer of an ORM or something in the middle. You can just process it. This is the MongoDB way, or you wouldn't be in the room. But there's something else. There's 6 IOs on the left, 3 index reads and 3 data block reads if you're lucky. There's 2 IOs on the right, 1 index read and 1 data block read. And if you think about that kind of IO improvement and performance improvement across all of your apps, that's meaningful. In fact, as we have done these migrations over the last 15 years, we have seen developer productivity go up 3 to 5x, and we have seen up to 70% cost savings on operations and on machines. It's amazing. And so I'm thrilled to have brought to you this year the Relational Migrator, a tool that helps you analyze your schema, move the data to a modern schema, and then move the data itself without downtime. The way it works is you connect to a relational database, it brings it up for you on the screen, and you can then look at your schema, you can embed fields, you can see what makes no sense to embed. You can then transfer your data over, either one time or continuous. And so we are very, very excited about this capability to help you move your applications and modernize your applications. And if you'd like to learn more about it, no surprise, there's a session later today that you can go see. So everything that we've talked about is about helping you build faster. But how can you build if you don't have the knowledge? How can you bring on new employees who can drink the MongoDB Kool-Aid and become converts? Well, it's all education. MongoDB University was founded in 2012, and in 2018, we passed 2 million registrants, and it's just gone up since then. But over time, we realized that the format of MongoDB University, long-form courses, certifications you could only get on certain days, was not what people needed. And so it's time to modernize MongoDB University. And so today, I'm actually launching a new version of MongoDB University with new courses, with a new learning system, with new labs, and new ways to learn on MongoDB. First and most importantly, oh, well, hey, thank you. We'll go back and we'll get it. There you go. Thank you. First, and most importantly, the content is ungated. We've learned that people just want to drop in and learn something, and they don't want to go through some paywall or registration process, which is going to end up in them getting 30 marketing emails from a lot of people in this room. Yeah, well, look, it's true, right? How many of you don't click through when you have to register? But you know what? We want you to register so we can give you more. The next thing is it has developer learning paths. You can choose multiple paths for what you want for your career, and we will tell you the courses and units and lessons to get there. Third, it has micro-learning modules that let you fit into anyone's schedule. We've optimized them that you can learn 5 to 7 minutes at a time, and that's different than what we had before. We have almost 100 new Atlas online labs which integrate directly with MongoDB Atlas, so you're working against a live database in real time as you learn. We all know you learn with your fingers just as much as you learn with your ears. And so today, I'd love you to scan this QR code or go to learn.mongodb.com and learn more about what we have to offer. And as a benefit for that, every single one of you attendees gets a free certification exam as long as you take it before January 31st. You will get an email after this session. So let me wrap up today by talking about going global. Obviously, the world is becoming more global, though it's struggling a little bit these days. When MongoDB Atlas was first launched, it was in 4 regions with 1 cloud provider in 2016. Today, we are in over 100 regions with 3 cloud providers, the 3 major ones you know about. And not only do we let you run the same software in each region, we are the only provider which lets you tie those databases together in real time and run multi-cloud clusters, moving data around between them as you need it, to adjust for companies you've acquired, to adjust for your own different budgeting at your company, to adjust for the fact that maybe your company has decided to go multi-cloud to avoid lock-in or to get geographic reach. We're the only vendor that does that. We recently launched 4 regions: Indonesia, Chile, Sweden, and South Africa. And I'm proud to say that Atlas is the most widely available cloud data service on the planet. Now, a question I get as CTO all the time is, what is your relationship with the cloud providers? Our relationship with AWS, Microsoft, and GCP is excellent. And they have staff who would love to help you adopt MongoDB on their cloud, often sometimes just as much or more than their own products, because they see how delighted people are with the product. So that's our story. Let me just give you 5 simple examples of stories that you might have had. A healthcare company in Norway is delivering simulation training for healthcare workers. A challenger bank in Vietnam is doing a truly digital bank with no physical presence of any kind. A startup in Chicago who, believe it or not, is reimagining dating and social networking. A nonprofit in Mexico who is taking surplus food from restaurants and selling it so that it doesn't go to waste. An NGO in South Africa is crowdsourcing investments in agriculture. This is just one of thousands. Sahir told you 160,000 new registrations per month. We are committed to the success of our customers. And in these trying times, which Mikey referred to, we want to be your partner. We don't want to be your vendor. We want to be there with you as you develop applications for your business and for your customers. And that's what we do at MongoDB. Now, I only have one more question, which is, what are you going to build next? Thank you very much for your time today. Enjoy the rest of the show.